Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Outside of Life, where it's all about how you can turn your creative passion into a profession. My name is Eva, and my guest today is a traditional watercolor artist and a freelance graphic designer from Nevada, United States. She is a part artist, part fairy, bringing all the magic. Her whimsical illustrations are truly beautiful. She specializes in traditional art, and her medium of choice is watercolor. She also does digital art, graphic design, social media management, and visual development. She has already more than 75,000 subscribers on her very popular YouTube channel, where she shares art challenges, product reviews, speed paintings, and bits from her personal life. Her dream is to write and publish a children's book about cystic fibrosis to educate more people about this disease, which she knows well herself. As she says, there is no better way to teach and engage kids than through storytelling. So please welcome Monique Renee, and let's get to the interview. Welcome everyone to the next episode of Outside of Life, and my guest today is Monique. So please welcome.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm super happy to have you here today, and it's super exciting to always to have people with the creative industry from YouTube, especially because it's like such a place to be now. So I would like to hear some of your background. When did you first realize when you start to be an artist, or you want to take it seriously?
Okay, well, I have always been drawing ever since I was a little kid, and art and drawing and something was always something that my family has nurtured. Like, my mom is a very creative person, so I kind of had that background. And then when I was in high school, I saw Disney's Tangled for the first time, and that is what made me decide, okay, I'm going to do art for the rest of my life, because at the time, I really wanted to make Disney movies. My goal has kind of shifted along the line, but art has always been consistently something that I've been super passionate about.
Oh, cool. Do you remember what was the first thing you drew?
First thing I drew, I have a bunch of really old books that I used to doodle in, and I actually wanted to create a story of some kind, and I had a group of 4 girls that I would draw over and over again. So that's in my memory the oldest thing I can think of was just this group of 4 girls, and they had magic powers, and I was in second grade, I think.
Cool. And so if you now think about, when you said also your parents were supportive, do you remember the first conversation you kind of told them, I want to take the art seriously?
Yes. It was shortly after I saw Tangled, and I was talking to my mom about pursuing art. I was in an art-geared high school. I was studying graphic design, but at the time I wasn't sure if I wanted to make it a career or not, because I was also considering some other things. But after I saw the movie, I talked to my mom, and I was like, I really, really want to do stuff like this. And she was like, okay, then make it happen. So she's always been very okay, if you want to do this, then you got to work hard and you got to do it.
Oh, that's great, because then do you have someone who supports you right there? That's amazing. And
I do. I'm so grateful.
That's really super cool. And did you have also mentors or someone else who inspired you, maybe online or some teacher?
I had an amazing graphic design teacher. I actually wasn't in his class until my senior year, but me and my friends would always kind of hang out at his class after school. But he studied, oh gosh, what was it? He studied some form of animation. I think it was visual development. Mm-hmm. So he had that background, and then he was teaching all of us how to use Photoshop and how to create interesting character designs. And he was not only good at what he did, but he was so good at teaching the rest of us. So it was really inspiring to me. And he really helped me a lot with kind of narrowing down what I wanted to do with art.
And do you remember maybe the best advice you ever received? Maybe from him or or her?
Yeah, the best advice he ever gave me. I was really struggling with the project, and the project was to create a bunch of character sheets for a story that we wanted to do. It was a really big project, and I had to create 5 characters in 3 different environments. And I was really struggling because I was not really good at digital art, and in my brain I thought you had to be good at digital art if you wanted to be in the industry. Mm-hmm. And he told me, you're struggling so much with this, why don't you just do it traditionally? You're so much more comfortable with that. And I was like, but that's not what you do in the industry. And he was like, that's silly. you're going to do the best work with what you're most comfortable with. So you want to put your best foot forward no matter what. And if you're not comfortable doing digital art, that's okay. There's no law saying you have to do digital or you have to do it this way. And sometimes it's even better to break the rules a little bit and break the status quo. And since then, I don't think I've picked up a digital art tablet since then. And I've really focused on my watercolors and my Copic markers. And I've really fell back in love with doing art because I was feeling so torn about it at the time. And he really helped me just fall back in love with why I like to do art in the first place, which is the process and not so much the end result.
Oh, that's great, because a lot of people are actually saying that the traditional art is harder, and a lot of young people now, they go right away to digital and then they don't learn the proper techniques of the traditional tools.
Exactly. And I think it's good to have a balance of both. I'm definitely not saying one is better than the other, but you definitely need to try both. And you need to try traditional too. And you need to work with doing things with pencil and paper in your hands and smudging, because if you know how to do it traditionally, you can do it so much better digitally and vice versa.
Yeah, for sure. And if you think about as well, maybe have you ever received like bad advice or something you remembered like, oh, this is not good?
I just remember while I had a great graphic design teacher in high school, I had a not so great actual art teacher because I was taking art as an elective. And my art teacher was so by the books, like the exact opposite of my favorite teacher. And all of her projects were just really, there wasn't any room for creativity. There was like a specific box and we had to just be inside that box. And I feel like I don't think it like hindered me as an artist because I had other outlets, but I do feel like if someone maybe wasn't as experienced with art as I was, that they would be like severely turned off by art. So that was just like a whole bad experience. I can't remember like a specific instance, but just the whole class and that whole teacher was just like,
So how did you keep yourself motivated, or how did you overcome this thing? Was it more the escape with the favorite classes, or was there something else you kind of did, like, okay, this is not for me, and how do you kind of progress from that?
Well, mostly the main motivating factor for me has always been like my goal. Like my goal at the time was to work for Disney. So I was like, with my mom's help, I'm going to do whatever I can to make that happen. And luckily, had been drawing since before that class, and I was going to draw after it. So I knew that was just like a period of time I just kind of had to get through. But I've always had very strong goals with where I wanted my art to be. So I just try to keep those in mind, and I try to remind myself, even if I'm feeling like, oh, I don't like this, or if I feel unmotivated, I just try to remember, okay, well, I got to keep doing it to get to my goals. And that's usually kicks me back on track.
And do you have like a vision or something you are always putting in your art? Something like either the happiness or a story or colors you like? Is there something there is always there?
That's kind of funny. I feel like there has been, but I feel like it's changed a lot over the years. Like, when I was younger, I really liked to make really bright, colorful, happy art. I wanted people to see my art and be happy. Then I went through a period where I was drawing like darker stuff and I wanted to like be edgy and I wanted to be like, ooh. And then I've kind of like balanced out and matured a bit. And now what I want my art to portray more than anything is some kind of story or some kind of emotion. And some pieces, of course, are better at expressing that than others. But for my favorite drawings that I've ever done always tell some kind of story and kind of like express how I felt at the time. So I try to put a lot of emotion into my work.
And if you think about, like, if someone wants to do what you do now, is there some tools or mediums you would like to recommend to them?
I would definitely recommend watching YouTube because that's what I did. Like way before I ever even thought of having my own YouTube channel, I looked up to people like Mark Curley, who has a YouTube channel, and Miss Carrie J, who has a YouTube channel, and I would watch all of their stuff. I would watch all of the tutorials. Honestly, YouTube is your best friend for learning stuff like art, and I'm really grateful that I live in a time where I have access to all of this information. As far as materials go, definitely plain old pencil and pen pencil and paper, sorry. Because I feel like a lot of people want to get the really expensive materials. They want to get the Copics and they want to get the glitter pens and all this kind of stuff. But they don't quite know what to do with it yet. So I definitely suggest just drawing first, like definitely just filling sketchbook after sketchbook with sketch after sketch, and keep going until you have more of a comfortable idea with your art and where you are.
And so how long did you wait until you got Copic markers, for example? Or what was the time period where you felt like, okay, now is the time to upgrade to like different materials?
Well, first, I didn't even use my own Copic markers. My graphic design teacher had some in his studio, and I would always try his out first before I knew if I wanted to like get some for myself. So he had the really nice Copic markers, and I found some really cheap alternatives online. So I actually used my high school graduation money to buy a set of those cheaper markers because it was the first time I'd had money in my entire life. So that was about a year of using Copics before I got my own. And then they weren't even Copics. Then I saved up my money for, I think, another year and a half before I went and bit the bullet and actually bought Copics.
Cool. Yeah, because I also used them for the first time at work, actually. I never bought them for myself, and then I tried it at work, and I'm like, oh, these actually are cool.
Yeah, they're like the first time you try them and you're like, oh, wow, okay, I can understand now.
It's like, that's different.
Oh, yeah. But then again, it's good to know how to use them first.
Yeah.
So you don't end up maybe like using too much ink or, ruining the nibs like you would if you just bought them without knowing how to use them first.
Yeah, exactly. And when you think about inspiration, maybe what is something which inspires you, or maybe you can mention something which is strange for some people that is your inspiration?
I'm definitely inspired a lot by nature. Nature is so inspiring to me. I love to go out and sketch in the wilderness, and I love to go hiking and camping. And whenever I do, I always feel like so rejuvenated with all the inspiration that I have. Something interesting that I do get inspired by is actually horror movies. My art is kind of on the cutesier side, and it's kind of pretty, but I love horror movies and I love scary stories, and I love the storytelling that goes into it. So I like to take like the horror aspects of it, and I like how they like bend the reality a bit in those horror movies. So I like to take that and kind of use it in my own way, and I get inspired a lot by scary stuff.
I actually heard it from more artists, which is quite surprising for me because I cannot handle horror movies. But especially from artists, they draw cute and nice, colorful stuff, and then in their free time they watch horror movies. So you're not the first one. I'm like, oh, maybe I should start watching horror movies.
That is so funny. I love that.
So it's like, okay. And now when you also mentioned like the motivation and the kind of inspiration, how do you motivate yourself mainly? Is it the nature, or is it something else you use?
Motivation is a hard one because I also have an illness that kind of impacts my ability to draw. So I try to keep myself to a schedule as much as possible. I try to draw at least every day something to keep me in the just the act of creating. And then some days I create more than others. Some days I don't end up creating anything. And I think the biggest thing was I try to be easy on myself, and I try to tell myself, it's okay if you miss a day. It's okay if you go a little bit without drawing, as long as you get back up and you get to doing it again. And that's kind of hard, but
yeah, definitely, because then it's for each person is different, right?
Absolutely.
And so how would you design your day? Maybe, as you say, like you want to like stay healthy and don't, like be hard on yourself. Is it something you maybe do sport, or do you meditate, or is it like you drink a coffee or something? What is your kind of day process, and how do you plan your work?
Well, I start off every day with a round of medicine, so that takes up a big chunk of my day, but then I always caffeinate because I can't do anything unless I have some kind of caffeine in me. And then I have a planner that I use. It's actually right here. This thing is my entire life.
Oh, cool.
So I got really into like planning and stickers and all the kind of fun stuff. But anyway, I make sure to write down all of my deadlines and all the things I want to do in a day in my planner. And then I have checklists. So I find it really easy to stay on track if I can check things off a checklist. So I start my day off by looking, okay, what do I need to do? And then I plan it in my head and then I get to it. There are some days where I do need to slow down a little bit and I may not be able to get everything off my checklist. For days like that, like I said, I try to be easy on myself. I lay down if I have to. I take a nap if I have to. I just kind of like recharge myself and maybe do some more medicine if I have to, stuff like that. But it's just a balance of not working too hard, but not staying too stagnant. And it's just kind of taken a lot of trial and error to get to a point where I can balance them, sort of. I still have trouble with it, not going to lie, but it's gotten easier.
And do you do something like, I heard about Pomodoro Technique. It's like when you take breaks every, I think it's 40 minutes. And I try to do it as well, like something, when you draw, because then you can get like, oh, I draw forever. So it's something like you draw for those 40 minutes, then you take like 10 minutes break, maybe you drink something or whatever, and then you go back to it. Do you do something like that? Or do you like go for a drawing and you just finish it?
I do that when I'm cleaning. But only when I clean. If I'm drawing, though, I tend to get like in the zone and I honestly lose track of time. So like 2 hours can pass and I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot to eat lunch. So that's that's something that I kind of am bad at. I will totally lose track of time if I'm really into a project and then I forget to eat or forget to, like take care of myself. I'm like, when's the last time I drank a glass of water?
It's like,
it's
not good.
No, it's not good.
And is there some maybe product or service you bought maybe in the last year or ever which simplifies your life?
I would definitely say my planner. That's definitely one of them. And then I actually was contacted by Skillshare to do a video for them. And I love their service. Like no ad for this. I'm just like talking purely from experience. It's a great service and I highly recommend it. There's lots of classes and lots of just like things that I never even thought would be beneficial to me, like marketing classes. So very, very, very helpful.
Oh, that you have a community on YouTube and, the networking and all of these like growing opportunities. Maybe can you share with young artists how it is that you can do the networking and maybe find artists to inspire you or learn from?
Absolutely. So I just want to say, first of all, I'm so grateful for the community that I have on YouTube. The art community on YouTube is so welcoming and so inspiring, and everyone's just really awesome in it. So the number one advice I can give is just to put yourself out there. It can be really scary, especially for younger artists. I remember myself with my first ever like DeviantArt account and feeling so nervous uploading my first picture. But honestly, the sooner you put yourself out there, the better it's going to be because you can start growing immediately. Don't be afraid to talk to other artists, especially artists that are in your niche. So if you like to make anime art, talk to other anime artists. If you like concept art, find forums and groups for other concept artists. There's also not just YouTube. There's DeviantArt, Facebook pages, all kinds of different forums. Go out and explore like all the opportunities that are available to you. Also, don't forget about real life networking too, because a lot of people focus on the internet part, which is understandable because everything's so digital now. But there are so many opportunities that I would have never had if I didn't go out in person and look for them. So I also know how scary that can be. And that's definitely something you work yourself up to. But don't disregard like real life networking too, like going to conventions and stuff.
So what are the events you go to?
Okay, I go to a lot of comic conventions. Those are my favorite because I love seeing cosplay. I'm a cosplayer myself. I just genuinely have a great time. But they're not always the most profitable. So if you're looking for networking opportunities or projects, go to conventions where there aren't a lot of artists. Like, for example, I go to a lot of author conventions. My aunt is actually a published author. Okay. So I go to a lot of book conventions, and there are always authors who need either graphic design work, or they're looking for an illustrator, or they have some kind of project in mind. That's how I got my first line of book covers that I illustrated, was going to one of those conventions and just talking to people and being like, hey, I have this art. Here's my business card. If you ever need anything, just shoot me an email. And she contacted me and she was like, I have all of these novels and I have no cover art for them. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yes. So that was awesome. Yeah. And that's something that I couldn't have gotten online because I had to meet her in person and talk to her.
Yeah.
So go to places where artists are needed, where they're not necessarily like grouped together like a Comic-Con.
Yeah. So my question, what is your favorite costume?
Okay. My favorite is actually Harley Quinn because I love her. She's my favorite DC character of all time. And she is so much fun to get in character with. Like, I just go all out. I'm like, hi, Puddin', and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, it's so much fun. And everyone loves to see a Harley cosplayer. And everyone's just like, it's so much fun. I love it. Harley's my favorite.
So maybe I'll do that for next Halloween. But then I'm not blonde, so, you know.
It's okay.
And when you mentioned these conventions about like book releases and authors, so which are like the ones maybe you can mention like by name so people can look it up online or?
The thing is, I go to really small ones that are close to my town.
Okay.
Because the smaller, I don't want to say the smaller the better, that's not always true, but it is easier if you go to local ones because then the authors and the people know that you're in the same town as them, and it's easier to get work done. And a lot of people prefer to work with people like in the same city, especially if they're looking for someone at a convention like this. So I would suggest just researching like book conventions in blank city or like the surrounding area, because I think I went to one really big one that was called Utopia, which is a young adult book convention, and it was huge, and I felt like it was overwhelming a little bit because there's so many people, so many authors, everyone's like flying out business cards. But if you go to a smaller one, just like, yeah, make it a raid. But if you go to like a smaller one, it's much easier to remember faces, remember names, be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna put this business card in a special pocket and I'll contact you when I get home, and it's just much easier to keep track of.
And how did you do it? Did you have a portfolio with you, like on iPad or printed out, or just like on phone website, like this is my link or something?
I had my phone and I had a YouTube video already uploaded, and I was like, this is what I do. Do you like it? Basically, here's my business card. The first one I'm thinking of, I was not quite sure how to do it, so I was just like going up to people and just being like, hi, I'm Monique and I do this and I do this. But since then I try to have like a little script that I have, like, hello, my name is Monique, I'm a graphic designer, I also have a YouTube channel with this many subscribers. If you're ever in the need for something like this is my business card, and I have some examples of my work on my business card, and like, and I also have a YouTube channel, and then if they want to look at it, I have it pulled up already. So that is something that definitely takes trial and error, and you just kind of learn it along the way.
Yeah, just to practice and see what works basically for you, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And if you kind of think about now the work what you do, how would you split your income, or what is your main income now, or do you have more income streams, or basically what do you live from?
This is actually kind of a hard question to answer because my life is in such a confusing place right now. But I did have a full-time job. That was how I made most of my money. I currently do not make enough through YouTube or freelance work on my own to support myself. I do make a good amount, though, through YouTube, which is something I never thought I would be able to. I can now support my channel through that income alone, and I can now buy upgrades and buy art supplies with that money to improve my channel, which is like so cool. And I don't have to dip into my like work money that goes for like bills and rent and stuff. I have like a separate little pocket of money that I can now use just for art supplies and like convention planning and stuff like that. But I did have a full-time job. Like I mentioned earlier, my fiance is going into the Coast Guard and we're moving, so I had to quit that job. But now I'm going to be focusing on really looking for freelance jobs. And I'm going to try to see if, with all the free time that I have now, if I can now make enough money to support myself through solely freelance. And I think I can do it. I am really confident in myself and my abilities. So that's something that I'm kind of testing the waters out right now. And it's going to take a few months to see if it's something that I can do. So wish me luck.
That's perfect. Yeah, definitely. I believe that this will work out just fine. When you have all the goals and you know that you will make it, then, dreams come reality. So
I'm sure hoping so. Plus, I'm excited now. I can really devote myself to some personal projects as well. I really want to write a book. I'm going to be working on that. So hopefully that will be like another source of revenue if I can actually get it, maybe not published, but maybe, I don't know, release it online or something. There's just so many different ways I can go now that I'm just kind of like overwhelmed and I have to like pick and choose what I want to do. So I'm excited.
So what do you want to write about, or is it still a secret? Is there something you can share right now?
Yes, I have a few videos up on my channel right now, but basically it's called Princess and Coffee Girl. And it's about a princess who runs away from all of her responsibilities and then runs away to Portland, Oregon, and ends up working in a coffee shop. So,
cool.
So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a whimsical-ish story that's not super set in reality, but not super fantasy. But basically, it's just something that I thought would be fun to write, so I'm going to write it, basically. But the feedback I've gotten from people from those YouTube videos has been, like, overwhelmingly positive. And I know a lot of people are, like, always asking, when's the book coming out? When's it coming out? I want to read it. So that's, like, such a huge motivating factor for me that so many people are interested in it. So I'm really excited to finally get some work done on that.
Oh, that's so cool. And do you already know if it is going to be, like, Kickstarter or how would you want to produce it, or that's not planned yet?
I've considered Kickstarter. I'm kind of still thinking about it. I don't think I want to do like a traditional publishing house because, like I said, my aunt is an author. I've kind of seen that world and I'm not sure if I want to be part of it. So I was thinking of self-publishing, and in order to do that, I would need to do some kind of crowdsourcing like Kickstarter or something like that. So it's something I'm still playing with. I got to kind of write the whole thing first, though. So that's still like a little, it's like in the back of my brain.
But it sounds great. So I'm looking forward to see that.
Thank you. I'm really excited about it.
I mean, yeah, it sounds amazing. So that would be super cool. And you said like maybe published, so it will be like a physical copy, or maybe some of the portals. What is it? The Tapas, right? That's the one with comic books, I think, online.
Yeah, the thing I want to do for the book is there's not a lot of young adult books that have illustrations in them, but the few that I have read, I've like thoroughly enjoyed, and they're some of my favorite books. So I want it to be a physical book that's not a comic book, but does have like fully illustrated pages in it. Yeah. So in order to do that, it would need to be a physical book. I'm also thinking of maybe doing like an Amazon ebook as well. I don't know how ebooks work though, so that's going to take like a lot of researching and planning. So
I think
a lot of stuff to think about.
Yeah, because I think with the ebooks, I think they charge more if you have images in the books, which is sometimes not convenient for basically picture books, but it's really convenient if there is only text. But I'm not sure, maybe they changed the policy, that I don't know.
I don't know either. It's something I'm going to have to really look into and research.
And now when you are, thinking what to say yes and no to with different projects, what is your kind of thinking process? How do you set the goal, or when do you say no?
So saying no is something that I have a huge problem with, and I know it's a problem because I want to say yes to everything, and I want to do all the work for everyone, and I want to undercharge myself, which is not good, and no one should ever undercharge themselves, but it's something that I really struggle with. So I try to keep in my brain, when someone comes to me with a project, I think, is this mutually beneficial? So people will often come to me like, hey, can you draw I don't know, we're a watch company. We want to promote our watches. Can you draw a watch for us? And I'm like, well, I don't really want to get into product illustration. That's not something that would really pursue my goals. What I want to do most of all is illustrate books and illustrate children's books and create stories. So the projects I pick and choose are the ones that will further my goals. Of course, if there is like a lull in work and I have some free time, I will kind of branch out more. And I do suggest branching out when you can, because you may find something that you didn't know you really liked. But if you're swamped and you have so many projects and you have to say no to something, say no to the things that aren't going to move you in the right direction to the rest of your goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good thing to think about.
Yeah, and like I said, it is hard, and that definitely takes getting used to. Saying no to people is not the easiest thing, but your future self will thank you for it if you say no sometimes. Honestly.
Yeah, definitely, because then if you say yes to something else, there is maybe no to your personal project because you will not have time for it.
Absolutely. And personal projects and projects that get you income, those are something you have to balance, and that is really dependent on like where you are as a person, and if you're living alone, if you're living with someone else, or how much money you need to be making. So that's really dependent on you and your personal situation. But do try to make time for your own personal projects so you can keep the passion alive, because if all you're doing is work, then your hobby and your passion just becomes another job, and no one wants that. That's not fun.
And so what would you maybe suggest to young yourself or young other artists? Is there something you wish you knew before you started?
So if I could tell my younger self anything, it would be that it's okay to move your goals. So like I mentioned before, I was dead set on working for Disney. I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to make Disney movies. But the more I got older, the more I realized that wasn't feasible for me as a person and where I was. I don't think that ultimately would be what would make me happy. And I kind of went through like a little crisis when I graduated high school, because I was like, well, shoot, that was my goal. Like, what do I have now? But then I realized it's okay to move the goalpost. If you had something that you thought only this will make you happy, I guarantee you there's 5 other paths you can take where you will be just as happy. So don't get bogged down by one idea of success. There are so many different paths you can take, so many different opportunities for you, and there's not one road to success. There are so many different ones. So don't get stuck in an idea of only one thing will make you happy, and just be open to all the things, all the possibilities.
Yeah, that's great. And when you mentioned as well that you had a full-time job as well, when you already started to work on your projects, right, on the side. And what was your job? Was it art related, or was it something completely different and your brain can relax?
It was totally different. I actually worked in a call center, but it was a call center for special phones for the hard of hearing. So I would transcribe phone conversations in real time so that the hard of hearing could read the phone conversation instead of listen to it. So it was a fulfilling job because I genuinely love helping people. And it was good for me because also with my health, it wasn't like a stressful job. I wasn't on my feet all the time. I wasn't coming into contact with a bunch of different people. But it definitely wasn't art related. But in the downtime between calls, they did let us sketch in sketchbooks. So I was able to doodle at work as long as I wasn't on a phone call. So that was pretty awesome.
Oh, that's good. So you were already thinking about how you can, like balance your time and everything.
Oh, yeah. I had planned so many YouTube videos at work and then gone home and actually filmed the video because I had all the time to think about it at work. It was a really good job, honestly. It was perfect for me.
Yeah, because I actually heard this as well before that, when you have a job which is not art related, that you don't have to use all of your mental artistic power basically at work. And then you create your own projects on the side. So maybe when you're thinking about going really full time, then something like a transition job might be a good idea.
Yeah. And I try to tell this to young artists all the time as well. A lot of artists want full-time artist to be their job. And for a lot of people, they prefer having a job and art separate because I've already seen it with the work that I do. It does become like a job. It does become something that you have to kind of like pull yourself through, and it becomes less fun when you're doing art for other people and for money. Of course, everyone dreams of like, being a comic book artist and selling millions of comic copies and, living off their personal projects. But in reality, if you're going to be a full-time artist, you're doing commissions for other people, you're, working on bringing other people's stories to life because that's what you do as an artist. So it's really hard as a full-time artist to balance personal projects and projects that earn you money. So for some people, it's better to have a day job and then have art as a hobby so you can spend all of your artistic energy on your own projects and you don't have to take commissions and you don't have to do work for other people. So that's another advice I would give to young artists is maybe do something else. Like, it's not giving up if you don't become a full-time artist. A lot of people feel that way, but it's not. If you decide that, there's a different path that makes you happier, please take it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect advice. So, because some people might be happy with being employed because that's a different type of security, and for others they want to have freelance or other art career. Then this is actually a good approach, kind of as a transition, as you mentioned. So. Oh
yeah, and everyone's different. Everyone has different ideas of what makes them happy. And like you said, the security is a big one. If you really enjoy financial security, maybe freelance isn't for you, because I know a lot of full-time freelance artists are, I wouldn't say more stressed on average, but they do have a stress that isn't there if you have a full-time stable job. So you just got to really, it's up and down. Yeah. But then some people like that too. Some people like the unpredictability of it. So it just depends on the person.
Yeah, just need to find themselves basically.
Absolutely. And it takes a while. If you're still young, it's okay if you don't know what makes you happy, because I'm 21. I still am not sure what makes me happy. I'm just kind of going with the flow, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. And because some people always think, even when you are, 30, that it's too late to change. But, probably not.
No, I know so many people. I think one of my favorite artists just did a video on this, Happy D Artist. If you haven't heard of her, go check her out. But she had a whole video where she was like, all these famous actors who hadn't started acting until they were 40 or 50. Like Morgan Freeman didn't get his first movie until he was 52. So it's definitely not too late. I know a lot of people start families and they get married and their hobbies and stuff kind of fall away, but it's never too late to pick those back up. And another thing is, I also wish I would have told this to my younger self. You don't have to be the best at anything. Comparison is the destroyer of happiness. You don't have to be better than anyone. The only thing that matters is if you do what makes your heart happy, then that's all that really matters. So maybe you are 30 and maybe you haven't improved your art since you drew when you were 15, and your art may not look the best. It may not look like those amazing Instagram artists, but you know what? That's okay. If you enjoy art, if you enjoy drawing, then keep doing it because it makes you happy, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, beautiful. I really like it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And if you think about maybe the inspiration and books, would that be maybe some book you would recommend to people, or maybe something you give as a gift?
Yes. But first of all, my favorite and most inspiring book of all time is always going to be Harry Potter, because I grew up with it and it's an endless well of inspiration to me. I also recommend the Spiderwick Chronicles by Tony DiTerlizzi and Holly Black. Tony DiTerlizzi is the illustrator for those books. Not only are the books fantastic, but the illustrations, honestly, those books and those illustrations are what really got me into drawing as a young kid. And I still pull them out and read them all the time. If you're looking for more technical books, I definitely recommend the Skillful Huntsman. I think that's what it's called. But it's written by a concept or a visual development artist, and he goes through so many different techniques in environment building, story, character design. That is what my graphic design teacher gave to me when I was in high school. He had a copy that would always sit at the front of his room, and we would always go and just reference it all the time. So that is a huge, huge, awesome source of information.
Yeah, I will need to check it out, some of these things, and we will put it in the show notes, of course, for people.
Yes.
Cool. And let's talk about the future. And you mentioned some of the things with the book. And if you imagine yourself 5 to 10 years and all your dreams come true and you cannot fail, you're not scared of anything. So what are you doing and what's happening?
Well, definitely I am a full-time illustrator. At this point, hopefully, my main goal as an artist at this point is to write and publish a children's book about children with cystic fibrosis, which is the disease that I have. We have one book, and it was written in 1980. It's very outdated.
Wow.
So I want to, it's awful. Not an awful book, but just we deserve more variety. Yeah, exactly. So I want to make a book, a more modern version for kids with CF, with, of course, illustrations and everything. And that is my ultimate goal. So hopefully in the next 10 years, I can make that a reality. I'm working for it.
That sounds really good. I'm sure that kids would love it because you need to learn and see the things. And then what is the better way when it's fun and nice and artistic, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love it. So there's no better way to teach kids than through storytelling, I believe. So that's my goal.
Perfect. Yeah. I'm looking forward to see that. That would be nice.
Thank you.
And the last question I would like to ask is about far future, and what would you like to be remembered for in 100 years?
Definitely for the work I've done for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. Like I mentioned, the book. I also have. It's funny because it's maybe not so much art related, but I do a lot of charity work for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And I try through my YouTube channel also to raise awareness. I do videos every April because that's when we have our big walkathon. I am a team member for the walkathon. My team once raised over $10,000 one year. So if anything, I want to be remembered as the work I've done for the CF Foundation for finding a cure for CF. So hopefully in my timeline, we'll find the cure. That's what I'm hoping for.
That's good. I hope so.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for being here. I think that's super inspiring for young people. And it's so cool.
Oh gosh, no worries. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast that I've done, so I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
But it's really great what you're doing online, so thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have last advice for artists before we say goodbye?
Just go with what makes you happy. If it's art, if it's music, if it's riding unicycles while blowing bubbles, do what makes you happy, forget the rest, because ultimately what matters is you and how you feel.
Perfect. So thank you again, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, bye!
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and let me know in comments. Also, please subscribe to my channel for more videos because I post new interview every single workday. You can also find the resources mentioned in this episode at artsideoflife.com. Just type a guest name in the search bar. There is also a little freebie waiting for you, so go check it out. If you want to listen to the interviews on the go, make sure to check out the podcast episodes at artsideoflife.com/podcast. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you, and don't forget to inspire each other. I will see you guys in the next episode.